it's hungry for gold, gotta learn to let it go.
Welcome to Wake the F Up podcast, where we talk about living consciously and helping people uncover their essential selves so that they can stop sleepwalking through life. Welcome back to Wake the F Up podcast. Today, I am absolutely honored to be joined by someone who is revolutionizing the way that we experience and memorialize loss. Adele Archer is the CEO and co-founder of Eterneva, a company that creates stunning, personalized diamonds from the ashes or hair of loved ones. Her company is much more than a service. It's a movement, one that transforms grief into a celebration of life, helping people navigate one of the most challenging experiences with beauty and meaning. Adele's groundbreaking work has been recognized in Forbes as 30 under 30 list. She even secured an investment from Mark Cuban on Shark Tank. Today, we're diving deep into her personal story, the mission of Eterneva, and how her work aligns with Wake Wellness's own focus on healing and transformation through love and self-discovery. Welcome, Adele. We are so excited to have you join us today. And you're not too far down the road from me. We're both in Texas. So
yeah, Texas girls.
It's very cold out there today. So we're so happy that we were able to make it and nobody lost power.
Yeah,
oddly enough,
exactly.
There's always like a power loss when things get a little weathery around here.
Very true.
So I wanted to begin today just to explore the roots of Eterneva and just kind of how it all started. And I was wondering if you could share what I'm assuming is a deeply personal journey that inspired you to create this company and what was happening in your life maybe at the time that this idea took shape.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we started Eterneva, Garrett, my co-founder, and I, originally we actually didn't think that, we didn't envision that we were going to be starting an end-of-life company. We had been working actually on a regular lab-grown diamond concept, and we were kind of in the early innings of perhaps deciding to build a brand there. So we were working with some diamond scientists. And then kind of on a personal side of my life, out of the blue, my business mentor and my really dear friend, Tracy, she was diagnosed with a stage 4 pancreatic cancer, just, kind of very suddenly. And Tracy was like my person. I mean, she was a really special, I think, we all have somebody that we can look across our life and say, what a gift that person came into my life, and not sure why they poured into me to the level that they did, but they had a huge impact on our trajectory. And Tracy was that for me. She was a really big part of my 20s. And so I think what was just heartbreaking to see was she had lost her parents young, and then really didn't have a lot of next of kin to take care of her as she was passing away. So it ended up being me and her best friend and her aunt that stepped up and, were her supporters, her caretakers, and her end-of-life planners. And so I was doing a lot of research and just being like, okay, how do we honor you? She knew she wanted to be cremated, but she didn't know from there. She was only 40, when all of this was going down. And so, just doing the research was finding a lot of things, but nothing that felt really special and really meaningful and really like her. I was kind of like, none of this is good enough for Tracy. You hold a high bar when it's a really special person. And I think my takeaway was just a lot of it felt really transactional and just not very personal, and it's kind of a wild thing because I just feel like we've had so much innovation and so much, development in so many other areas of our life. And it was so surprising to not see that happening in this space. And so then it actually was a diamond scientist that over dinner one night was like, well, there is carbon in ashes. And if we could figure out how to get the carbon out of Tracy's ashes, maybe I could grow you a diamond from her carbon. And I'm like, oh my God, that is just the best idea I've ever heard. She would absolutely love to know that she became a diamond. And so she ended up being our first diamond that we made. And that's her. So that's her black diamond. I did a
Beautiful.
black. We can do any color of diamond. And I did a black because she used to tell me, she's like, life is like skiing. You can play it safe and ski the blue squares for the rest of your life, or you can bet on yourself and believe in yourself and know that you're capable of skiing black diamonds. And so every time I look at her, I'm like, she's my reminder of, take the risk and go all out.
It's so powerful, and you're actually the second jewelry company that I've aligned with in terms of putting meaning behind the things that we put on our body and in a way to memorialize important memories. But
Yeah.
ever since I found out about your company, I literally can't stop thinking about the ways that would like to make diamonds. You know, as a mother whose daughter lost her dad, it's so sad, and your life becomes more rich because you understand the fragility of loss. But there's moments that I continue to go through, and you probably feel the same about Tracy, where something big or good is happening, and then you're
Mm,
sitting with all this emotionality of the loss and the sadness that this person's not there, and the success or the joy of this beautiful moment. And I can never stop thinking about my daughter's wedding day, and I keep thinking
yeah.
I want to make diamonds for her to wear her dad, you know,
Yeah.
down the aisle. And it's so beautiful to think that this company represents so much more than just a piece of jewelry.
Yeah.
Um, it's you're actually carrying your loved one with you around on your body, which is really, really, really special.
I think that was like such a powerful insight because historically, we had a lot of tradition around like final resting place, and having somebody buried or having somebody, interred or whatever it may be. And, or sorry, like in a columbarium. But I think for a lot of people, the resonance is the idea of being able to have that person with you still. And we see so much of our family saying like they get to be with me on our next family vacation, they get to be on the wedding day. It
Yeah.
feels like you get to continue to do life with them. And that's just something that we really believe in, is like, you shouldn't have to move on from your loved ones. You should be able to move forward, with them as being a part of your go forward story. And yeah, I mean, I definitely resonate with that. I think like I remember a very palpable moment. This is actually my grandma, by the way. So I have a pink
Oh my
diamond.
gosh.
So I got my people. And I remember when we went on Shark Tank, it was a really cool moment because I was like, my
Yeah, I
girls are with
bet.
me, like Tracy is going to be the objection handler because she was the business one. And then my grandma was actually an actress. And so I'm like, grandma's got the cameras, Tracy's got the objection handle. Like, we got this. And there's just something to be said, just feeling that, as compared to, I also have a vial of Tracy's ashes that's in my bedside. And it's wild when I think about it. I'm like, I think I've seen that twice, in the last year, as compared to the daily interaction that I get to have when I'm driving and the sun hits her diamond, or I'm typing and I like just have a moment. And I think that they get to be so much more present, and thought about day over
Well,
day.
that's such a cool thought process when you're thinking about the emotions or the realizations that brought you to this company. And I wanted you to talk a bit about this unique way that you're honoring her. I mean, how
Yeah.
did you originally know, or was it more like the scientists came with the idea and then it propelled you into this company, or were you emotionally looking for a way to constantly have this reminder of Tracy's influence on your life?
Yeah. I mean, for sure. I definitely, I wanted to find something that, you know, did her justice. One of her like dying fears was that she was going to get forgotten.
Yeah.
Because I think, again, she didn't have a ton of lineage that was going to keep her story alive and her legacy alive. And it just was like, man, that's so heartbreaking. And so that felt really important to me, was to just be a torchbearer of her and her story, and the legacy that she had here. And so, that like makes me emotional to say, but,
No.
yeah, I think as soon as I heard about this option, or I knew that this could be a possibility, it was just like, that's the business that we have to start. We actually were not the first company, believe it or not, to do this. We were the newest company. This had been around for a long time. So originally I actually went to go start the process with a couple companies. And I don't know. It was just like, I was ready to spend the money. Like, it wasn't an objection from that standpoint. It was just, nobody even asked me what her name was or what our relationship was. And, then I was asking questions like, how do I know her ashes are really going into the diamond? How do you kind of prove just, the process itself? And it was very black box, and nobody was transparent. Nobody would tell you even where their labs were located, which was kind of weird. And, so that was like a big inspiration too, was being like, I love this idea. It doesn't surprise me, frankly, that like I don't think a lot of people have heard about this, because I just feel like this isn't getting executed on in a way that, just like is really wholehearted and really transparent and just gives you total peace of mind. So that was actually the inspiration for us, was being like, how much more meaningful would it be to start a company in this space versus just regular lab grown jewelry, and to do it right. And so it's just something I'm really proud of, is like, we're at by far and away the company that's built the market around this. And I think it's because we just take a very personal approach. You know, we get to know our customers and their loved ones a lot up front, and then we actually take them on a journey. So this was something in the beginning I think we didn't expect, was, you know, we were just like involved or like giving people updates along the way because we wanted them to be comfortable, confident, knew their loved one was in good hands. We were doing as we said. You know, they didn't have to worry. They knew where they were. They knew like what was happening. And every time we sent an update, we would get these outsized reactions of just like, oh my God, I'm crying at work. And I just showed my whole office. And then I posted on my social media. And, you know, it was just like, wow, okay, this is really impactful for people. Why don't we make this really storytelling driven? So like not just learning about their loved one up front, but really pulling it through these updates so that they're video driven, and like we're speaking on camera, like while, you know, doing like, okay, like we're going to reveal their carbon for the first time. Oh my God, check it out. And what we ended up finding, and I think this is a really big insight for just the end of life space, is when people have an experience to focus on that takes time, our process on average is like 7 to 9 months. We're giving them some, like, basically kind of an avenue to get to keep talking about their loved one, to have something positive to look forward to. So that creates some like post-traumatic resilience and growth, you know, is kind of like being able to actually enjoy some element or like have something positive to look forward to. And really integrate, because like they're talking about it, you know, and they're not avoiding it. Because I think on the other side of a funeral, everybody goes home and they stop talking about your person. And so it can be very isolating. And then a lot of people will avoid doing the work because they're just like, you know, I'm in a vacuum right now. I'm in kind of a culture void of it, and I don't have to look at it. Versus I think we're kind of the safe container where they're continuing to process, but in a way that feels very handheld through the experience.
It's really, really powerful, because I think what you're talking about, at least from the griever's perspective, is what people really need after a loved one dies in the grieving process. And I think you're right. Like, funerals are often, if you're lucky enough to be able to discuss it with a person who's on their death path, a lot about what their wants are, right? And you are trying to fulfill something that you hoped that would do right by them and honor them in a loving way, but you're so bereft and it's so quick. And if anyone's had to work with a funeral home, with all due respect, that industry can be really challenging because they're such experts that they know how to check all these boxes, but it feels like you're almost just like getting pushed through a funnel. And this feels really cool because I think, you know, same that you lost your friend to pancreatic cancer at 40. I lost my husband in my 30s, you know, and it's like you lose control, right? Like, I think that their fear of not being remembered is real, because they didn't plan at this young age to have this debilitating disease that took them before they could finish it, parts of their life that would be remembered more significantly. You know what I mean? Everything was taken from them. And I think this provides a sense of control to the person, the loved one, who can say, now this is my space to grieve and do this personal thing that is a memorial on my hand or in my body that I can see every day to remind me you're still with me. Or even just to, like, you know, a lot of people get tattoos. I got a tattoo for this very reason, so that I reminded myself to keep going. And I just love the idea of jewelry, because it's usually for a special occasion, and and it's pretty and it's happy, you know, it's a happy thing.
It, like, you know, I think the other thing too is that it's actually going to last generationally. And as I think about just like macro trends in the end of life space, you know, we were 10% cremation in the United States in 1980. We're pathing to be at 80% by 2040, which is just like wild. That, you know, I think that that's really indicative of just like where we're at from a culture standpoint, and kind of moving away from tradition and more towards, you know, celebration of life. But I think what makes me sad is like, you know, a lot of people are keeping urns at home. And when you think about like what happens to that urn, you know, for the next generation, like nobody wants to inherit that, you know? And so it is kind of like, what's that kind of what's a legacy piece that creates that continuity of someone's story over time. And I think that's really something very beautiful about the diamond, is like, that's totally going to be something that gets handed down, person to person to person, and, keeps their story alive. And one of the things that I'm really excited about that we're currently working on is we're actually, there's an ability for us to create a marker within the diamond, so that you'll be able to literally scan your diamond with your phone, and it will pull up kind of this curated, series of memories that, you can imbue your diamond with. So videos and photos and things like that. Cause that was just something where we were like, it's going to be so cool that a great great grandchild will get this diamond, but wouldn't it be even better if their story could go with it? Yeah.
Well, it's really powerful. I mean, I think in this company I'm working on how loving the self, loving others,
Mm,
cherishing love can actually transform your grief, and inevitably your life is shattered when you lose someone significant to you, and almost the person you were dies right along with your loved one. And it's really important that we own the loss, and I think our culture,
yeah.
as you're saying, is really
Yeah.
bad at allowing people to memorialize and grieve in the way that's personal to them. They want it to be
Totally.
over, and they want you to kind of get over it and move on. And like, as you're saying, for your loved one, it's really challenging when they died tragically or young, or even it was just the most important person that's influential on you. So telling the story, even
Yeah.
through your company, is so cool. Like, I love that you walk them through the process, and you tell us a little bit about your facility, because you told me off camera, you're just up the street from me essentially. And what do you walk your clients through in the process when they're choosing their diamond and going through this process? What does it look like?
Yeah. So, like, end to end, when someone will initially say, I think this is something I want to do, they'll talk to our team. And it's like, we really strive to be the least company that you're going to like interact with. We're just like, we're loving human hearts who aren't weird about grief and genuinely just want to know about your loved one and help you celebrate them, And so we tell people all the time, like, hey, if you're not ready, then don't do it now, or if this
Yeah.
doesn't feel right, don't do it. Which is like the least salesy thing I think you could hear somebody say, which is good. Like, I'm like, I want it to feel like that. And so as a result, the initial conversation you have with our team is like often really deep. And it's really, if somebody is comfortable and willing to go there, like, we want to know about your loved one and like talk about them and kind of learn everything we can. Because then what we do as we go through the process is we ensure every single person on our team knows their story, and is honoring and respecting, and really, because like we work on one diamond at a time. It's a very bespoke process. It's actually really different from regular lab grown diamonds, by way, like, we use a different method to grow the diamond. The technology is all different. They're essentially, mostly mass producing in India and growing 100 diamonds at a time. We have a facility in Kerrville, Texas, and another one in Germany, where we're working on one individual at a time. And we grow obviously just one diamond in the machine at a time. But, our technicians, like we literally have like a run sheet, as we call it, has their loved one's photo. And as they're working on their diamond, like, they're seeing all the details of who this person is and like their story and what makes them special. And it's just really intentional. And at every step of the process, we're actually on the other side of a major stage. We're capturing that milestone in either photo or video form. And so people get to witness a transformation, which I think is really powerful. We hear a lot of people like, painting an analogy to like witnessing a gestation process, where you're watching someone go ashes to carbon, carbon to rough diamond to cut diamond. If we go colored, we can do, kind of a coloration reveal. And we're talking to the families on these videos and being like, oh, your dad was a chemistry teacher. He would nerd out so hard at this, and it's like these little details that get paid off, kind of throughout the experience. And they get a dedicated care team that walks the journey with them on our side, and a lot of the time, things like birthdays, anniversaries of passing, dates that our friends and family forget, we're really intentional about recording that, so that sometimes we're the only text you get that day, or like check in. So there's a very human element to it. And then also kind of a digital and cool experience as well, where you can log in and you can see where you're at in process and nerd out and like learn more about that process. And then the thing that I love, to kind of your original question, sorry, is we have our facility is in Kerrville, Texas, our U.S. facility, and we love to make in-person experiences for people. So we'll have people all the time if they want to come and get a tour of the facility, or if they want to drop their loved one's ashes off in person, or just like meet our team and see the people behind it. We love it and we welcome them. And it's really cool. Like literally we have a wall where every single person we've ever made a diamond for, person or pet, about 40% of our business is pets, we put their photo up on the wall, a little Polaroid. So we have nearly 5,000 loved ones, and it's really something to see. And then for those that want to, if we're like, let's say at the very end when the diamond comes home, it's called the homecoming. And so we'll like host homecomings for our customers at our facility if they want to come celebrate with us and, just make it special. So I think the in-person rituals is also powerful, and just another way that you can be kind of like processing and integrating. And, I don't believe the diamond is like the silver bullet to, having a grief wellness journey. There's many other things you can do, but I think the insight that we've learned is that experiences are important. And so that's why we don't want to ever be a transactional product offering. We're not like a vessel or a container for holding ashes, because that doesn't create a real emotional for people. We want to facilitate an experience that's like supporting them over time,
Oh, I love that it's a long process. And I think it was really poignant what you just said. So from ashes to carbon, and how you're talking about almost like this gritty, let's say dirty, difficult, muddy, the grit of life that we become after we are put into ashes. And then you transform what is essentially our grief journey. It's like that's a very much an alliteration for how it's done in the real world, right? In the beginning, when this all happens and a person actually hands you the most beloved person in a jar, in a container, it's really actually truly in a plastic bag, as you well know, inside of a container, which feels even more horrible. Right. I remember when the funeral home handed me Carl and it was in a bag, like a go bag, a grocery, like a little bit nicer than a grocery. But I was thinking to myself, oh my God, his entire life, like this is how we go. And so to take that hardship or that lowest moment, bring in a sense of control, which I think is really something that we're missing as grievers. It's like we lose so much control of our life, of who we are, of how they were taken from us. And then you're able to kind of transform step by step in a longer way, like a more intentional, as you said, to then become something really beautiful, which is what I think these difficult losses, we have no control over, of course, and they're so terrible. Right. But in the end, who we become, much like the diamond, is someone I think more special, more beautiful, more light. You reflect out this joy and this maybe even inner peace that you have to, if you're going to heal, you have to go through in order to heal or to get to the other side of this really, really hard thing. It's really beautiful. Do you have maybe a story that you want to share? Like, is there one that sticks in your mind that you like love to tell? I mean, obviously your own story is so beautiful as you told about your friend, but is there a customer journey that you're like, oh my gosh, this was one that just will stay in my heart forever?
Oh my gosh, I have so many of those that it can be so hard to choose one. I think like the ones that mean a lot to me are the ones where a really tragic or traumatic situation has happened. And just knowing that you can bring brightness to people. So she's become a very dear friend of mine. One of our customers, she lost her daughter to an accidental overdose. And so being able to take her family through that process, in the honoring of Megan and creating pink diamonds, because she loved pink. It was her favorite color. And, and just really like, just celebrating this family. And then it was crazy because she lost her son as we were finishing Megan's diamond. She lost her son to the same thing. And so just like, and it was just like so obvious and so immediate for her that she's like obviously mad as a diamond. And then we're going to have both of them set side by side. And, I have no idea how Liz had the resilience and the strength to like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, you have to go through it, I suppose, but she was just so grace filled and has channeled so much purpose into now being such a huge advocate for just the opioid crisis that we're experiencing in our country right now. But I think it meant a lot to me to take a mama like that I know everybody else has been too uncomfortable to talk about that loss with her and avoid it, and it's just like you start to feel like you have the plague, like, people
Right.
are just like tiptoeing around, this tragedy that you experienced. And so, yeah, it's just like, man, I just want to love her. I want to like love up on her and, just make that as like unbelievably special as we possibly can. And so I think that that's just like the gift and what we do is, I know that we get to bring brightness to people at a time that they really need it, and hope. And the coolest thing ever is when you get to be a part of a homecoming. And so here, like in Texas, whenever we do it, if we have like a local homecoming that's drivable, our team will like literally fight over who's going to hand deliver that diamond. Um, because yeah, you get to bear witness to somebody who has been looking forward to this day, for the past like 8 months. And it's so cute. They're like so nervous on the day of. They're
Yeah.
just like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to experience, and like all these emotions, like, I'm freaking out right now. And then you watch them open the box and see their loved one's diamond for the first time, and you just like watch something inside them like release, and it's just this like calm, and it's this like closure, and and it's joyful. And so Liz, this mama, like I took her to lunch, and it was actually her son's girlfriend was there, and we all like they opened their diamonds, and just like we all cried together.
Mhm.
And it was just so beautiful, to create beauty from tragedy. I think is just like what means so much. And I think it's really cool too, is like we're working with funeral homes and funeral directors, because we are now distributed, through many funeral
Sure.
homes. That's what I say to them too, is I'm just like, you guys see people on the hardest day, it's
Yeah.
like the day after your loved one passes, like you're in a total fog and you just like aren't wrapping your head around what happened. It's just like somber as hell, and for them to get to witness a family a year later on a joyful day, like I think brings so much more purpose and meaning to their jobs, because they care a lot. Like they
Yeah,
are
of
very
course.
service oriented people. And yeah, I think it's nice to bring hope, and brightness to something hard and dark.
Well, integration is so important. The grief integration is so important. I can't stress enough how much time it takes for the brain to even feel safe enough to process the magnitude of the loss, especially like your customer Liz. I mean, I can't even
Absolutely.
imagine. Like
Yeah.
a wife losing her husband is incredibly hard. When a mother losing her child, like that's a next level grief that I
Mhm.
pray will never happen to anyone I care about or wish on anyone in the world. But it is really, really beautiful what you're doing, and I really think you're breaking barriers and inviting people to kind of reimagine how we embrace loss, how
Yeah.
we can place back some control and actually make
Yeah.
it a process where we're slowly integrating this
Yeah.
grief and creating something right that we can control that's more beautiful in the end. But
I
I wanted
think
to talk a little bit about your company itself. So I it's so interesting, and you probably feel this way, in the grieving space, I don't know if you've experienced this, like, with
mm,
dealing with other companies, but it feels like, at least when my kids went back to school is, like, my best example of this, that the world and teachers, it's so odd, but, like, schools are not prepared for grievers, work is not prepared for grievers.
yeah.
Shit, I don't even know if we're prepared for our own grief in that way. It's like,
Yep.
how do you as a boss and as a leader and co-founder of your company, how do you implement education for your staff and build
Yeah.
a community of professionals who are essentially just catchers of all this grief? It's really hard, right?
It is really hard. It's really hard. And, it's an always improving process, especially given that, we're a startup, relatively
Right.
speaking, and I think honestly, it's just creating a culture of care and a culture of like, we always say to our team, like, you're not grief therapists. So like, don't put that pressure on yourself. Like you're not here to help someone clinically process. What you are here for is to be an empathetic friend who's just genuinely curious about their person and, is going to be a torchbearer of their story and their legacy. And one of the kindest and most loving things that you can do is just say, like, what was their name? And, if you're
Right.
open to it, I'd love to see a photo. And nobody asked them that, right? And so I think it is the little things. It's supporting our team with, like, how do you set boundaries, and ensure that, that the work is getting done in an environment that's trained to have the work being done, but that we, are just people that are creating an opening, and we're listeners. But then, of course, like, self-care on our side is so important.
Right.
Like, we do bring professionals in to work with our team and chat with our team. And I think a big part of, like, doing hard work like this is also being able to reflect on the beauty that comes out of it. And so I think we have a lot of traditions internally around sharing inaugurations, which is when we inaugurate someone to the family and, like, one of our customers, and sharing their story. And so our team are storytellers, and they're sharing, like, these epic people and what they learned about them. Cause, like, you learn so much about life through this
Yeah.
lens. I think that's a bit of a gift of, like, doing this work is, I get to hear so many love stories, and I'm just like, man, that was an awesome husband, or that was an awesome wife. And it creates a blueprint for how I want to show up in my marriage.
Yeah.
So you gain a lot. And I think creating forums for our team to reflect on that. And then the feedback loop we get, like, our customers are so grateful, and they send us the
Yeah.
most effusive messages. And, we have automations around asking for reviews, kind of near an end of a process. And it's just like every single day, it's like 5-star review with, like, this changed my life. I want to
Yeah.
shout Liz out because, like, she was the only person that checked in on me, at a time I needed it most, or the updates came at the perfect time, or, and so it's just like they're getting that constant feedback loop of, like, you are changing lives, and yeah,
Gotta feel so good.
it's like yeah, I'm just humbled to get to do that work, that's just like, man, my brother told
Well,
me
true.
recently. Oh, sorry, go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead. Sorry. No, please. I want
I
to
was
hear. I
just
can't
gonna
wait.
say that, like, my brother told I was having, like, just a, founder moment, like, end of
Yeah.
last year, like, just it was like one of those things where you're just like, God, this is just, like, hard sometimes, right? Like, being a
Yeah.
business owner is hard. And so I was in it. And he was just like, well, what's really cool is, like, you've left your legacy already. And, like, that really hit, because I think that's just something that is true for my whole team. It's like, if
Yeah.
we do go tomorrow, I feel really proud of the time that we spent. So
Well, and I think it's really cool to be in a passion-driven startup company. I feel the same about this company. Like, I constantly, it's hard to be in a startup. You are not wrong, and props to you, because I can't even imagine, like, and not just that, the pressure and the care that you have to take with your product. Like, room for error on your side must be small to none,
not even
and that's a
yeah,
lot of pressure. When you're in a learning process and in a chemistry process where things inevitably can go wrong in any industry, and I would say that it's really powerful to be able to fail, and it would be okay, because just the process and the community that you're building is actually so, 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 so important. And I think
yeah,
it speaks to the volumes of those of us who are in grief, that we need community in death, and we need to share our stories. And
yep,
no matter how complicated your loss might be, because inevitably there can be all kinds of, like, loss, as it happened with my husband, can happen
mhm,
in a weird time, in an unexpected time where maybe you weren't at your best, and, like, you've
yeah,
got all this anger, and there's lots of confusion around,
100%.
what happened. And I think to have a community and be able to be honest about where you are and walk through a process is so important. And I was wondering, you're building not only this community internally but
Mhm.
externally as well. Like, social media, it seems like you've got this, like, robust community of and a lot of younger
Yeah.
grievers we're seeing. And so, talk to me a little bit about what you're seeing in your community, and what you're seeing that's changing as these younger generations are thinking about grief and death and loss. Does it look different for you and the younger communities?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, I think what's so interesting about Eterneva is, like, we are very much category creating. And so even just getting to witness from when we started, our first year was 2018, to where we are now, how much of a cultural, like, mindset shift has even happened in that period of time. Like, I remember when we first started, it was a very 50-50 reaction. Like, either people were like, I love this, or they're like, that is so weird. Like, no. But I think it was just more of a societal reflection on people's relationship with death and their willingness to like think about it and look at it. And then COVID happened, and we were all faced with our own mortality and the mortality of loved ones, and in some unfortunate cases, like had that happen firsthand. And so it just got a lot more real, and I think people stopped like making jokes about it as much. I mean, it still happens, but like nowhere close, like I don't see people like trivializing it as much. But what I do see absolutely is the young people the whole way have been the ones that are most open to it. Like they're the ones willing to open the conversation at the dinner table, and be like, Mom, like a lot of the time what we see, like we're very viral on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. And I think that's just one thing that like I'm really proud of is no brands really have been built in end of life. And,
Yeah, it's
Eterneva
hard.
buck that trend by, we always say we're not a grief therapy brand. Like we're not here to just like give resources and say, I see you, I feel you, grief is so hard. I'm like that. I don't feel like that's our role. I think our role is to humanize this experience and continue to celebrate people and, just like keep their stories alive. And so we just are very storytelling driven. And it turns out like people really love that and they really want to hear that. And so they're often very uplifting, beautiful, video stories that just go very viral on our social media. And then it's often a young person that sees it. And then they bring the TikTok video to the dinner table and they're like, Mom, what are we doing with Dad's ashes in the closet? Like, why don't we
Yeah.
finally do something? And so they're the facilitators that are kind of like opening that up.
Which
And
is so beautiful, right? Because we need to have these conversations. Like death is such an interesting thing that we keep locked up until we get to such a, it's almost like combustible place. Talk about creating diamonds from ashes, but it's like
yeah,
we combust and then we have all these extreme decisions to make. And I mean, even my husband and I talking about, ashes and where we want to be spread. It's really hard conversations. It's really challenging to think if we died
totally.
in our space where we've already had so much loss, if we die young, what would happen? What do we want to do? Where do you want to be spread? But I
Yeah.
love the idea that young people are approaching their, their parents, their loved ones to say like, hey, let's get a plan together that maybe we can, our older generations, stop avoiding the inevitable that we are all
Yeah.
going to face in some capacity. So
And
it's really
one
cool.
thing that I'd love to add to that is like, I think if there's one insight that I would love our culture to embrace is that it should be a two-way conversation and dialogue, because it's not just about the person who's passing away and what their wishes are, but it's also about the person that's left behind and what they need to grieve you.
Yeah.
And I think I saw this particularly in the beginning of Eterneva. Like I had a very dear friend of mine that her dad passed and it was sudden, and they had never had those conversations. And so he used to just always joke like, oh, just put me in a box in a ditch somewhere, like, don't spend money on me, whatever. And then she really wanted to do a diamond for him, and she felt really conflicted because she was just like,
Hmm.
would my dad want this? Would he bless this? Like, I really want to have a part of him with me and I want to spend the money, but like, am I not honoring his wish? And I'm like, man, I think if he knew that that's what you wanted, like he would have totally blessed it. And so like that was one kind of experience. And then another experience, my best friend, who I'm very close with her family, her dad at 40 was diagnosed with glioblastoma out of the
Oh,
blue.
that's
And went from like skiing double blacks to passing away in 2 months. And I think what was the thing that I was really grateful for, in that time was I literally got to go visit with Alix and Dave, my friend Alix and her dad Dave. And Alix and I talked to her dad about this. And so she's like, Dad, like, I'm going to make you a diamond, right? And he just started crying and he was just like, I'm good enough for that. And she's like, what are you
right.
talking about, you weirdo? Of course you are. But they got to talk about, like, I got to take him through, hey, here's what's going to happen, like, let me tell you about the experience. And then they got to talk about, like, what color diamond you want to be and what
Yeah.
does that, what meaning does that carry for us? And they ended up choosing a green diamond together because they were like, our best time together was spent in nature. And I just want to like have that be the anchor memory. And so it's just so cool that like they got to co-create, that meaning together. And then on the other side of him passing, it was just like Alix was like, I'm so grateful that I knew that this is something that I wanted to do. I had his blessing. He was honored by it. Like, what a different experience for somebody than somebody that was left guessing, you know?
Yeah, it's so powerful to have the opportunity to have these conversations. And I think that if our listeners out there are hearing anything that you've said today, I mean, everything you said today was so important, but this is really a message of love from those of us on the other side who will walk grief or are walking grief on the day-to-day process, and owning companies to try to get people to have conversations is, life is fragile, time is limited. We always are in our society so blind to the idea that we ourselves in our healthy states can be taken like that. And I think it's extremely important, not only that you reflect on those that you've lost and how you can live your life to the fullest in honoring of the fact that life is fragile, but to have these conversations about what we need on both sides of the table in the grief journey, because we are going to lose loved ones, and we just can put a little bit of control and have these conversations, at least to just hear the person that we love's wishes, and
Mhm.
it's hard sometimes to carry those wishes on the other side
Yeah.
of them dying, but at the same time, just knowing in your heart we almost die in the process of where we are on, like, our own healing path. And so if you're
Mhm.
avoiding emotionality in general, it can
Yeah.
be really, like, it's almost like you're passing that to your loved one, and then they have to almost do your work for you
Yeah.
along with their own work, and it's really a challenge.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
it's
On your
we're
grief
like,
journey is going to be that much harder too, you know, is like if there's the repression and the avoidance, it's going to rear its ugly head at some point. So
that's
like,
the truth, and it's like I witness sometimes my husband, he and his wife were, just like avoiders of all the feelings, of the hard feelings, and, like, he
mm,
has to process not only his hard feelings that he never emoted to her, but also maybe her stuck emotions, and I
mm,
am grateful, that Carl and I had a lot of conversations about it, because I do
yeah,
think cancer sometimes, it's a hard journey, and it can be a painful one, but it does put
yeah,
that death right in your face, and require you to kind of have these conversations. And I think it's made me a better mom, a better person because of it. So
100%.
I I'm
Absolutely.
just so enamored with you in general. Like, this whole conversation is really powerful, and I think it's special at such a young age that we've been able to have such hardships change the way that we handle and live our lives, and then to make companies out of it. I mean, who
Mhm.
knows? I mean, I'm always like, who knows what's going to happen with Wake Wellness? But I do know that the stories that I get to witness and hold and cherish, from other people's loss and journey through healing, is so powerful that
So
it is a
powerful.
legacy, and it's changed me forever. And I'm so excited. So are there any, like, rituals or shared
Mhm.
practices that you find, I don't know, that you embrace in grief and healing? Like, what have you seen, or what do you like to
Yeah.
embrace when you're walking someone down this 6 month to 12-month path to create the diamond?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think what's really special is like we also attract a certain, often archetype of griever that is more growth minded and wants to like have kind of a processing path. And I think what's beautiful is like that is what Eterneva is, but it's not the only one. And I think we hear so many cool stories of how people are honoring their loved ones in different and unique ways. We've called them legacy projects. That something I'm really passionate about is just like how can we give people as many like kind of in like sources of inspiration of legacy projects that other people are doing as ways to honor their loved ones. So a great example, I had a early customer, also Tracy, and she had lost, unfortunately, her little boys. And one of her friends did was she was a designer and she designed these stickers that were hashtag R&R See the World. And she had copious amounts of them printed and sent to anybody that she knew or interacted with. And she just said, whenever you travel somewhere cool, please just like put a sticker up and take a photo because my boys always wanted to travel and they didn't get the chance to. And when you go and you look at that hashtag, it's like, oh my God, it's so powerful. Like it's like their
Yeah.
stickers have gone to every corner of the planet at this point. I had some and I put a bunch of them in like South Africa. I was like down at the very tip of South Africa, putting it on a sign. And
So cool.
it was so cool. And I'm like, what a beautiful, powerful legacy project. My friend Alix, like her and her dad always wanted to hike Kilimanjaro, and they didn't get to. So she spread his ashes all the way up Kilimanjaro. But, it can be like big and epic like that, or it could just be like, one of our customers, Bryce, like his daughter was a photographer and just loved photography. So he sponsored a scholarship, for a photography student to be able to, that he would kind of pay for their education. And so it's just like, what are the little things that you can do that keep your loved one's story alive, their legacy alive? Often it's like being active in some way, shape, or form with your grief. And focusing out, I think, really helps. It's like the focusing out and the creating purpose and meaning and doing something active, like those can just be really powerful rituals. And, I think being able to share those stories with each other so that it sparks inspiration, and you go, you know what? Love that like bumper sticker idea. I'm going to run with that one, because like you don't have to like put that much pressure on yourself to figure out the perfect thing. Just like hear what other people are doing and try a few of them on,
It's really powerful. And I think I often wonder sometimes, like, is it the humanistic and emotional side of us that has to make sense of these hard losses that
Yeah,
often don't make sense at all, right? And like you
totally.
can get infuriated to say like, that was meant to be when people say stuff like that, like, God has a plan, and like, it doesn't always feel like that when you're the one carrying the loss. And
Mhm.
this is really cool because sort of what I've been doing with the Wake Wellness in general. We do retreats and we do coaching and all sorts of things, but is really about using the acronym LOVE on how you're on a healing path. And it starts with looking inside. And I'm wondering, like, I keep thinking about how making this diamond process would be exactly the same journey. It's like you almost have to look inside and figure out what is your story as you tell, your community of employees, and maybe even like sharing with your external community. But and then you have to own that loss. You have to own what it
Mhm.
feels like to be you. You have to figure out what was it that was poignant about this relationship and how do I want to reflect it. And gosh, cool, right? Like a color, a shape, a
Yeah.
necklace, a ring. Like I love that you said someone chose green because of all the time in nature. Like
Yep.
I never really, even prepping for this interview, thought about like, sometimes how there's all this intimacy, and they call it like autonomic intimacy, which is like what feels right inside of your body. And sometimes it's shapes and colors, and sometimes it's emotions. That we talk mostly about emotions, right? But like there's so
Yeah.
much more to human life than that. There's all these experiences and taking them with you. And it's really cool when you start to value your own personal shaping and story of this grief, because everywhere else is really about someone else's story. It's really not about the griever and how
Yep.
you're able to handle
Exactly.
it. And then, like that last stage you said is like really embracing how this loss will change you. And if you are
Yeah.
allowed to look at the love part of
Yep.
it, right? Like all the love that they gave you. And even maybe, sometimes in widows cases, like allowing yourself to know that it's okay to love again. Like it's okay
Yeah.
to keep living because that's what your loved one would want, even if they never
100%.
said it to you. It's really, really cool. I'm obsessed with your company, obsessed with your mission. I'm obsessed with your vantage point. Like, I think it's really beautiful. And to all the listeners out there,
Mm.
we are going to tag you in all sorts of ways. The show notes will have every possible way to connect with you. Is there any closing things you want to like tell the listeners about Eterneva, about yourself or grief, or anything that you've been thinking about that you just want to share as a closing piece?
Oh my goodness. I feel like we
No
covered
pressure.
so much. It was so great. Yeah. I mean, I think no, I honestly I think we did it. And
You did amazing.
there's a future where I'm like, how do we co-create a grief retreat together for our families? Like that would be rad. So
I am in. I am in. And actually, we'll talk about this off camera because we are
yeah.
building more retreats this year. And our signature retreat is so awesome. Oh my God, you would love it. It's down in Puerto Vallarta area in
Mm,
Quimixto, Mexico, and it's indigenous land, and
wow.
it's
Epic.
happening. And I think that grievers need a space to cherish their stories,
Mhm.
no matter how difficult a loss can be. I often am like thinking about the outliers. As a widow, it's weird because you lose this person, and if you're a young widow at that, like how do you go on? How do you, like, you feel this guilt to live and love again, and then you like almost have to hide
Yeah.
everything in your new life because you're like, but I still love this person who I didn't want to die, but they died, And then all of a sudden I am like in love and happy again. And it's like, well, that is grief, right? Like it's like
they're
I have
allowed
to
to
stamp
coexist.
my feet. Yes, we're like the pain and the love can sit side by side, and but it
Totally.
reframes. At least I feel like my grief has reframed the way that I look at the world. It reframed the way I thought about love. It's not this Disney fairy tale where you're one love forever, and our heart's capacity is massive, and
I
it's really
agree. And I think
beautiful.
too, like you're allowed to still honor and learn from. I think that's one of the most like powerful things I've taken away from Eterneva is like so many of our loved ones have become role models to me by hearing their story, you know, and just like hearing how they showed up in their relationships. Cause like you don't do a diamond for just anybody. It's like,
Right.
you know, and that's even a cool lens in and of itself is like, you earn a
You're
diamond
special.
by how you showed up in somebody's life and how you prioritized relationship, so much so that they can't imagine not having a physical part of you with them for the rest of their life. And so there's insights in that, you know, what did they
Very
do
much.
in their relationships that's so special, and how can you learn from them and apply it to your own? You know, it's just like people always say, like, you know, history is the best teacher. I think like people who've passed are like incredible teachers, incredible role models, you know,
Right.
and how do you take that into your parenting and, you know, into your existing relationship, like, you know, partnership. And yeah, I would just love to see more of a focus on that. I think as we were talking this week about Valentine's Day, and, you know, we just want to like go tell like a bunch of epic love stories because, you know, there's just so much you can learn from like partners that were just so beautiful, and how do you bring that into your current partnership, you know?
It's totally true. And I think the duality of life is that none of us are perfect. And so no matter what happens after you die, like, right, we can't be perfect. And so those who are going to carry on whatever memories and legacy we have, there's
Yeah.
always the duality of like we can take the things that made them special and the love that they gave us and the lessons that we learned from them, and we can continue to work those in our life. And we can also take the things that maybe they weren't that great at, maybe they struggled with, and we can almost as like an honoring. I do this a lot with my late husband is I think about the places where he was unable to, because we were so young, you
Yeah.
know, heal this part of himself or this
Mhm.
anxiety piece or this part of the parenting that we could have done better together. Like, and
Mm,
I constantly am like, you know what, buddy, I'm going to carry for you, and I'm going to make sure I heal as best as I can for our children. And I make sure that I'm going to work on my anxiety and talk about these things that are hard because you didn't get the chance to get there. And I think it's really
mm,
cool that it
totally.
doesn't have to be perfect, your grief story or your grief person.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
we definitely should do a retreat. I'm like going to think about this, and I think we could do a diamond creating, like start the process, and then maybe the
Yeah.
year after they come back, I'm like, whoo, this could be so
Right?
powerful.
Oh,
I'm
it's so
in.
good. So
I
good.
am
I mean,
in.
I said I wanted more in-person experiences, so I feel like we're just like calling that into being.
I know, I know. I'm so grateful that you're here today and that we got this
Thank
chance to
you.
hear your story. And thank you so much for sharing your story and for giving us such profound insight into the work that you're doing. It's clear that Eterneva is so much more than diamonds. It's about
Yeah,
love, remembrance, and transformation.
thank you.
And I just want to say to our listeners out there, if Adele's story and mission resonated with you, I'm encouraging you to learn more about Eterneva by visiting their website, following them on social media. Obviously, you're going to get all these like amazing TikToks that have gone viral. And remember
Our
that
socials is where
healing.
it's at. It's like
Yes.
one like great heartwarming content, frankly, that just inspires you. Like just go follow us on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or YouTube, you know. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's enriching.
And just remember that like sharing our stories is a huge part of our human story. It's been like that since the beginning of time. Sharing stories is vital to who we are in this
100%.
world. And so we encourage our listeners out there, follow Eterneva, follow Wake Wellness, and
Mhm.
just remember that loss is a journey. It takes a lot of love and patience and connection and community to heal. So reach out, DM us, and this won't be the last time you see Adele and I together. I think we've got some co-creating to do.
Yes, yes, we do. 100%.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And
Thank
everybody check out the
you.
show notes for all of the ways to get started on creating your diamond for your loved ones.
If you enjoyed this episode of Wake the F Up, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join the Wake community by downloading our app. Just search for The Wake Wellness in the Apple or Android App Store. And follow us on Instagram at The Wake Wellness. Thanks for listening.